in, I will let them in.
Okie dokie. All right. Fine. All right. So where should we start? Let's start with who I am. So a lot of people know me already, don't they? They know who Neil is. What property investor, advanced trainer, mentor and coach for over 10 years, business owner. I also run a property meeting in Wiltshire. So anybody who's online that's this neck of the woods in this Swindon, Bath sort of area. I run that once a month. We've got the next one coming up at the end of November now. So yeah, if you want to come along to that, let me know. And then I'm also a Prince's Trust mentor, which is one of my fun things that I like to do. And that's to help youngsters under 25 that are starting up their own businesses. It's amazing. I've got a young lad on at the moment who does pop-up escape rooms, which is quite interesting. So he's literally just started with me, and he's actually sold an escape room to the York Minster, believe it or not, which is weird, but apparently it's part of their what they want to try and do. So anyway, I'm working with him, and that's really good fun.
Wow.
Okay, so what are we going to do today? So Olivia, you asked me to cover these topics. You asked me to my experiences and tips. So I'm investing for a long time, so I've just tried to put sort of the beginning and something I've done recently on that, and a few tips as we go along, and then thoughts and suggestions on the current situation towards the end, because the current situation is just so much fun at the moment, isn't it? So okay, so what did I do first? Very first was my first buy-to-let in 2004. Bought the buy-to-let. I bought a new build. Everybody's going, ah! It was a new build flat, and I was told I was getting a really good deal by the agent and the person I was working with, and I needed to go along and put £500 down on this property so that I could secure it. It was the first block of quite a big building that were a group of blocks that were being sold. So I went along, put down my £500, and was looking at it. It was going to possibly be a great pension for me. The property itself I bought for 105,000. And I've had it probably about 20 years now. But when I bought it, nobody mentioned to me about service charge. Nobody mentioned to me, I hadn't done any training. I hadn't done anything by then. I just thought, I'm going to get a pension and it'll work really well. But, after you start thinking, including agents' fees for renting it out, you start bringing the service charge. I found I was £50 a month worse off. So I was doing really good at this point. I bought this property for my pension, but you know what? I'm going to hold this pension forever. This is nearly over 20 years ago now. So I'm thinking long term, it's going to be worth it. It's going to go up in value. I'm going to keep hold of this property. Property's always going up. And so I am now, 18 years on from buying that property for 105. Guess what it's worth now? It's 140 now. So it's gone up a whole £35,000 in 18 years. Woo! I'm really good at this, aren't I? So that's kind of my thought process at the time. I thought, what the flipping heck's going on here? I thought this is supposed to be, at the time, I thought, I'm losing £50. If I carry on buying any like this, I'm going to be in a big, bad situation at the time. So the good thing at the time, though, was back then as an IT contractor, which is what I was, I could self-certify. So back then, you could actually say to the mortgage company, yeah, I can afford that. And that was all they needed. So there was no means testing. There was no hoops to jump through or anything like that, or proving anything that you've got to prove right now. So I literally just signed a paper to say with the Bank of Ireland, who were doing mortgages back then, they're not doing them anymore, that I could afford the mortgage, and I got it. But of course, the bad thing was the service charges and everything else. So that's when I thought, you know what, I need to go and learn how to do this property. So at some point, I decided I was going to learn. But how did I find that? I had a leaflet come through the letterbox from Martin Lewis in a bath full of money. And it looked like he was naked, but he had money right up to his chest because we didn't want to see that anyway. But he said, come and learn how to make money from property. So that was it. I thought, no, I'm going to go and do this. I went along to that free, I don't know how many of you guys that are listening to this have done all of this, probably most of you, that free 2-hour session in a hotel in Bath. And was really, this is what I want to do. This is it. This is what I want to do. Where do I sign? Get involved. And that's what I did. So I signed up. I went and did the training courses, and then started started to build that business. And it took me 2 years to get to the point where I could replace my income from property for the IT business. So after 2 years, I was able to walk away from that IT business. I was literally working 24/7 in that IT business, and it was such a big relief. There was a period where I had 1 foot in the IT business, 1 foot in the property business, which was quite difficult to challenge. I used to take every Friday off where I could, drive up to my area, do as many viewings as I could, and get back, in between taking support calls on my phone from IT support customers. I had other staff as well, so I had their phone calls more so. What do we do about this? So it was really, really challenging, but I got there. So 2 years after that, I was then asked back by the company that I did the training with to become a mentor and a coach and an advanced training. And I did that for 8 years, and I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed it. 8 years immersing myself, helping others achieve their goals is unbelievable and unbelievably rewarding. So it's one of the things I really loved. Only I decided to leave so that I could do my own thing, because the sheer numbers that I was doing at the time were taking me away from my business. So the company I was working for, I was doing a couple of mentorships a week. I was doing a training course every so often, and I was coaching probably on the go, something like 10 people at a time. So all of that was actually taking me away from what I was doing and what I was enjoying doing. So I decided to walk away from that a couple of years ago. And now I set up my own company doing the same thing, Clever Property Investing. But I do it now for just a small number of people. I do it for 10 clients at a time maximum. I'm coaching, mentoring, and training. And that gives me much more time to crack on in my own business. But the benefit for everybody else, the people that I work with, is that they get access to me much easier, much quicker. So, effectively, if they want to call me or they want to text me, they need an email. I've got a lady, literally just got one just now before I came on here. She's just been off to do a viewing, and she sent me a load of text about the viewings, and I can respond to that much better than I used to be able to. And that works much better, and I enjoy it so much better. So what was my initial strategy? My initial strategy was little buy-to-lets. I guess like most people that are starting out, I wanted to replace my income, as I mentioned. So I looked around at places that I could find cheap properties. Where I live at the time when I started, a 2 or 3 bedroom terrace house would sell for about £150,000 and only rented for £500. Now I've got a little tip and a little thing that I use when if you're just looking at a property quickly, and that is for every £20,000 of purchase price, you need to earn £100 worth of rent. So if you look at that model, £150,000 purchase, the rent in the area was only 750. Oh no, I needed, 750. The rent was only £500. So it didn't work in my area where I was. So I had to go further afield. I had to look out for houses and look around for what I was wanting to get. Those houses now, 12, 15 years on, are now selling for 250, but they're still only renting for £1,000 a month. So it still doesn't work out. It still doesn't stack up for me in this area with that strategy. So what I needed to do is use the 5-2-1 strategy, which a lot of you may already come along. If you're starting out, you pick 5 areas, and people used to say to me, how do I pick those 5 areas? Well, I used to just say, pick 5 areas where you know people, you've got friends, maybe people you went to college or university with or school with or work with, and then go and investigate those 5 areas. Then reduce it down to 2. So 2 of those areas may well work when you start looking at the numbers. As I've just said, if you're finding something for £100,000 for sale and it'll rent for £500, then that's kind of starting for you to focus in and say, okay, I'm going to start looking at that kind of area a bit more. And then you'll narrow that down to 2 areas. Those 2 areas, one of the biggest things I'm looking for is the stock, the numbers of property that are available in that area. And that will give me an indication. But then I get off my backside and I go and look. I'm booking as many viewings as I can. And my first area of those 2, way back when, was a place called Margate in Kent on the coast. Now, there was loads and loads of repossessions going on in Margate at the time. What had happened is all the old hotels, they converted into little flats. So 8 to 10 flats in an old hotel. It was all nicely done a few years ago. And the government, in their wisdom, had a lot of immigrants, a lot of refugees coming in, and they put them all in various streets in that area. What happened is it turned into a bit of a ghetto. You had different streets with different nationalities and different ethnic minorities or religions, and there was a bit of infighting going on. If you walked down one street and you weren't from that area, you would be in a bit of trouble if you didn't get through quickly. So the government then said, okay, well, we've got to do something about this. And they then started pushing people out around the country, different areas. But of course, we had all these people that had hotels that they converted with flats or empty. So I literally went along in Margate with agents who had a string of keys for 8, 9, 10 flats, and would open each one, and every one had been repossessed. And they were going for anything from 20 to 30,000 pounds each. So I thought, bang, found it. You know, £400-500 rent. I found my area. The only challenge for me was when I drove down there the first time from where I am to Margate, it took me 7 hours, 2 hours of which I was on the M25, sat in a car park, sat in a traffic jam. So for me, it was kind of, whoa, this is a great area. I could do well here, but I'm the sort of person that doesn't want to travel too much. I know there are plenty of people out there that love it. I know you all know Craig, and Craig goes up to Newcastle from Reading, no problem at all, does the work. But I didn't like that idea. I wanted to be able to go somewhere that I could get to and back pretty much in the same day. So I started looking the other way, and that's what led me to South Wales. So I went off to South Wales and got involved with properties in South Wales, which only takes me 2 hours. And that Friday, I would take off. I would leave early in the Friday morning. I would do 10 viewings on the Friday, get back Friday night, work out my offers. Saturday morning, I'm banging in my offers. And that's where I got that to that 2-year investments, where I got up to the right point that I wanted to be at. So my first deal was a repossession. It was interesting. Very first deal I got. I put the offer in. I got £42,000 offer accepted, and I was still working in the schools at this time. So my IT business promoted. We looked after primary schools and small businesses, and I did a little bit of work for the police. And I got this £42,000 offer accepted on a 3-bedroom terraced house in South Wales. But it was a repossession, so it had to go. If anyone's bought from a repossession, it goes to public notice. Offer was accepted, and it's on public notice for 7 days. I didn't realise any of this, didn't know any of this was going on. And I'm in the school doing some work, and I get this phone call from Hannah, the agent. She goes, "Mr. Stewart, your £42,000 offer, somebody else has put in a higher bid. Would you like to increase your offer?" And I went, "Oh, okay. So what have they offered?" She said, "Well, I can't tell you, Mr. Stewart." I said, "What do you mean you can't tell me?" He said, "I can't tell you. We're not allowed to tell you. We just got to tell you it's a higher offer, and would you like to increase your offer?" She says, "You've got until 12 o'clock tomorrow to put in an increased offer." And I went, "I don't know. I put the phone down. I was quite angry at this point, because I was like, somebody's put in an offer higher than me, but I can't know about it. So how much do I go up 1,000? Do I go 2,000, 500 quid? What is it?" Anyway, she phones me back at 11 o'clock the next day, and she said, "Mr. Stewart, did you want to increase your offer?" I said, "Hannah, look, I want to be honest with you. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if you're telling me the truth. You know, are you telling this to me just because you want me to increase the price so you get a bigger commission? What's the deal?" And she basically said, no, not at all. We don't get any more commission on repossessions. We only get a set fee. She goes, "And honestly, we have had a higher fee, but I can't tell you what it is." I goes, "Well, Hannah, I've got a problem then. I don't know whether to offer you £500 or £1,000. She said, "Well, it's just a little bit more than yours, Mr. Stewart." I said, "Okay, Hannah, it's a little bit more to me might be 500, but a little bit more to you might be 1,000. Would it be a little bit more to you or to me?" She goes, "Mr. Stewart, if you put an offer in, I can tell you whether I can accept it or not." I went, "Okay." So I went extra £500. She goes, "I can accept that." And I bought the property. And I bought lots more from her since, because she was in the restrictions of her agency, and we couldn't do any more than that. So I bought that property, and that was fabulous. That property, I had no money. So I had no money to buy it. So I had £42,000 property to buy. And I think there's a few photos of it, the inside. And I don't know if you can see those clearly or not, but you can see there is stickers on the toilet seat, the sink in the bathroom, and also on the fireplace. That's typical of a repossession. Everything gets drained down, the gas gets turned off, the electric gets turned off, the water gets drained down, and they put the stickers like that. So it's an example. If you're looking at properties and you see that, you know it's repossession. So I was buying this property. What I eventually did was I bought it with angel money. I had the deposit with angel money, and I bought the property with bridging money. both bridging to the purchase, and I had angel money, which was actually someone I was training with who wanted to learn to do the process as well. £40,000 or £42,000 was about £10,000 they lent me for the deposit. But I didn't have any more money to do it up. So this is where we had a little bit of a kind of a little strategy that my coach at the time helped me with. And we did a very clever little thing. And we actually told the people what we're going to do is we're going to put this on the market and we're going to try and see if we can get a tenant to do it up for us. So what we did was we advertised it. We put advertise out and we put an advert in the paper, something along the lines of property for rent, £500 a month, needs a bit of TLC, free rent for 3 months. So what I was suggesting was I was going to give them free rent for 3 months if they did the work on the property. It was going to save me a lot on labour. So we did that, and we had the phones, my nutter phone. Have you come across the term nutter phone, or your other phone for when you're doing adverts in the paper, because you do get nutters call you, was going crazy. So I did viewings and viewings and viewings. But one of the things I was doing each time was qualifying. So I qualified it down to about 5 people. And I used a script. I don't know if you can see that, but if you need it, I can send that out. Basically, every time the phone rang, I had this bit of paper or I had it on my computer and I asked these questions. I'd say, what's their contact details? How did they hear about me? And then I started to say, I'm looking for someone who wants a home, not a DOS house. And I'd use those words. And they go, what? I say, well, is that you? Are you looking for a home? He says, yeah, I want someone to treat my property nicely. I'm sick of people and bad tenants. At this point, I only had 1 tenant in my other property, but that was kind of thing what I was saying. And again, I said, we want people that want a home. And again, I said, is that you? They said, yes. Also, I'm looking for long term. I'm looking for 5, 10, 25 years. How long do you want to stay? I'll be writing all these answers down. And what's your reason for moving? So I'll be asking them that. Are you local to the area? And then I was coming to the bit nitty gritty. What I want someone who wants to do up their own home. So I want them to turn it into their own place, maybe put in a new kitchen, new bathroom, maybe paint and decorate. And I would be saying, is that something you could do? Or do you have anybody in your family that's capable of doing this? 9 times out of 10, they'll be saying, oh yeah, well, my mate can paint and decorate on my flat. Well, not paint and decorate. I'm looking for someone who's got skilled trade. You know, perhaps they're a plumber, perhaps they're an electrician. And I would be whittling it down to that. Now, inevitably, a lot of people said yes when they didn't, but I got it down to about 5 or 6 people. And I would then suggest to them, if they're keen to have a drive past the house to have a look, see if it suits them. Once I did that, I'd then go and do the viewings. And I did on this one, I did 10 viewings, I think, in the end. And there's a whole lot of stories about that, which I won't go into because we haven't got much time. But I eventually narrowed it down to 1 couple. So it was an older, the girl was younger than the guy, slightly, not a huge amount, maybe 5 to 10 years. And they came in and they said, you know, we'd love to take the house. They weren't going to pass any referencing. He was a handyman in a primary school. He did the work there. And he showed me some pictures of a shed that he'd built and a outside building that he put the bricks up for and everything else. So he was proving to me that he got skills. And I just got a really lovely feeling about them. But I didn't leave it there. I said, look, okay, fine, leave it with me. Now, I knew they wouldn't pass the referencing checks because of what they earned, what they were doing each month. So I made an excuse to go around to their house, where they were living now, and said, I need to bring the referencing forms with me. I need to fill in. Now, the reason the referencing forms were neither here nor there. It was me going to see what they looked like, where they were, what they were living like, what the condition they were in at the moment. Was the house a real mess? Were they genuinely looking after the place? They were living at his mother's house at the time, and everything looked absolutely fine. So I gave them the house. And this was a challenge for my wife at the time, because what we were doing, I'd done the training. She hadn't involved in the training at all. So I offered them the house, no deposit, no rent for 3 months, to take on the house and to do it up. And I gave them a timescale that it needed to be done in the next 3 months. And we agreed what was going to be done. So my ex-wife at the time, she said to me, so you're giving our house that you've just bought to somebody, you're not taking any rent, you're not taking any deposit, and you're just going to let them move in. Now, when you say it like that, it sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? It sounds a bit wrong. Why would you do that? So fair enough. That was a bit of a moment, a wake up call for me. So I did say, okay, I tell you what I'll do is I'll ask them for month four's rent up front. So that can be there. So when they get to month four, then a £40,000 property mortgage was very, very low. It was about £100 a month. I think once I refinanced it, it got to £75,000 valuation. Once I refinanced it, I was paying about £100 a month. So £400 in the bank, then I got 4 months worth of rent covered, or mortgages covered, sorry. So there was no stress there. They moved in and they did a cracking job, and they're still tenants with me now. They've moved multiple houses. They've had babies and things like that. So it was a fabulous strategy, and it's one that I always try and do where I can. Okay, so what am I doing now, or what's something more local? Oh, sorry. Before we go to that, social housing. The area I was in was very much social housing. It was very, very much an area where it was low-income families. So I got very quickly experienced and learned over the last the last 15 years or so, but in the first 2 years, how to work with the council and housing benefit tenants. Because these guys were potentially on benefits, they were earning income, but it was kind of piecemeal. She worked in a call center and a little bit at Amazon, and he worked in the school when they needed him. So I found very quickly the right way to work with housing benefit and get housing benefit paid directly to me. So they didn't want the money. They wanted the rent coming straight to me. And that started after the 4th month. So we started having the housing benefit come directly. And that worked really well, and has worked. And the best thing about that is during the sort of pandemic, I've not had any arrears. I've not had any problems with rent payments. In actual fact, they went up a little bit. And I've had all through that period, the council have constantly paid that money to me. You know, COVID never really affected me much. Even when somebody was struggling in COVID, the council was still covering that difference. So for that strategy in that area, that works really well for me. Do I have problems with social housing tenants? Okay, so this is a real conversation with real people. I'm not going to tell you all the nicest stuff without telling you some of the stuff that can go wrong. So right now, I have got an eviction going on in process with one of my properties in South Wales. I've got a tenant in there that has not paid, or what's happened is they were paying a top up. So they're getting the housing benefit, and then there was a top up element, and they haven't paid that top up for some time. They were doing it weekly because that's pretty much how they live. But it got quite far down the road. Now, up to a point, this person's been in there for a long time. They've always been catching up, no problem at all. But it got to quite a rate. By the time we got to where we are now, they're £3,000 in arrears. That's quite a considerable amount of money. So at some point, I said, that's enough. I'm going to have to evict you before we get too far down the road. So we put in the eviction notice. The tenant got the eviction notice. When they get the eviction notice, they've got an opportunity to respond to that. So, you know, I'm saying I'm evicting you because you've not paid your rent or you have £3,000 arrears. They could come back and say anything they like, really. They could say, well, you know, he hasn't fixed this, or he hasn't repaired that, or he hasn't done this, or I can't afford it because of this, or whatever it is. So this lady put in a little response saying, well, I can't afford to live anywhere else. That's all she said. She didn't say anything else. This, I can't afford to live anywhere else. So I went to court. Once it's gone to court, the council, of course, typical councils, they've got nowhere to house anybody. So she's told the council, this is what's happening to me, and the council have turned around and said, we don't want you to leave. Go to court. Get the landlord to take you to court. Once the court notice comes through, then we can try and help you. Which cost me £300 or something to go to court, £324, something like that, to put a court notice in. Then the council stepped in, and the council then came back to me, or to the agent that's managing this for me, and said, if we pay off the arrears, will you give the tenant another 12 months contract? Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? So I went back and said, no, not giving her 12 months. What's to stop her, you paying off the arrears, and then this happens again? So, and they also wanted me to pull the notice on the court. So we said, okay, no, and that's gone backwards and forwards. And what's happened has happened. And actually, literally yesterday, the £3,000 has hit my bank account. Is I agreed to give her 6 months notice, as long as she created a direct debit to pay the top up, and she paid the first one. and that started going through the process, and she's got 6 months now. So in actual fact, it looked like I was going to lose out £3,000. I haven't. I've got all of that money, and I've also got the tenant staying in there who's happy, and the council actually are backing us if anything goes wrong. So could have gone the other way, I guess, but it didn't, which is good news. Okay, so more recent. What have I done more recently? So I'll give you some little figures here. So just a quick one for those people that tune in, a little bit of a question that you can ask. So this is a 3-bedroom semi I found. It was on the market for 145. They wanted 150. This was actually an auction property, and I happen to know the auctioneer very well. And he said to me, look, they want 150, so I'm 145. This is in my area. The done-up value at the time, which was last year, I think, or the year before, was 175,000. And the works required was about 20,000. I looked at other fees, such as stamp duty, solicitors and brokers, about 4,500. And the rent was 450. So on that, 750. So on that basis, there's the figures. You can pause this when you want to. Basically, I'll run through it quite quickly. The done-up value, 175. Working backwards from that 175, we've got 131, 250. We'd get a 75% mortgage. Refurb, I put 25 in. I'm not sure why I put 25 in, but yeah, I'll put 25 in. Solicitors and brokers, about 2,000, so 104,000. I bought 104,000 out of stamp duty at 3%. Take that off. So my no money left in purchase for this property would have been at 101. A little bit 101. There's a lot of numbers in there. That's got a typo in there. Okay. 101,123, I think that is. Okay. And it would sell, unfortunately, would sell all day long for 145. In this area, this property was going 145 all day long. So that would mean leaving in £44,000. So I did the figures on that, and I had a rent of 750, a mortgage of 6%, agents fees 10%, Mo 75. I'm losing £55 on that a month on that property. So on that basis, I definitely wouldn't have bought this property by looking at it. If I was doing it on a basis of a straight buy to let, there's no way I was going to do it. It couldn't be HMO, this property either. So it wasn't in a. I did phone up the council, and because it's an ex-council property, and sometimes on the land registry, you'll see little things on there saying that they don't want it to be anything more than a family home. So I phoned up the council and said, would you be interested in me turning this into a multi-let? And they said, no, don't want multi-lets in that area. So it couldn't be a multi-let for me. So I couldn't have turned it to HMO. So what did I do? What did I do then? So I went off and I had a look. So this is an example of last month's, but I had a look on the Halifax price index, and I thought, how much of this price is the house going to go up for? And basically on this price index for the last year or so, it's showing an increase of 9, 10%, 8, 10%, no problems at all. So I'm thinking, okay, that might work. What if, so I did some figures, what if I bought for 145 and in 5 years' time it'd be worth 3%? I did 3% and 9%. So I did the lowest and then the best of where it'd be worth. So the property would be worth anything between 168 to 225, depending on what kind of growth we get in the next 5 years. And then what I did was I went off and I found myself a tenant buyer. So I just happened to find a lady who has a cleaning business. And the lady was made bankrupt at some point in her past, so she couldn't get a mortgage. Now that bankruptcy notice was expiring in a few years' time, and she was getting better at credit management and things like that. So her credit score was getting better. She really, really wanted to live in this place, in this area, and she really, really loved the area. Really wanted to go there. So I sat down with her and I said, okay, you can't buy the property right now. I get that. But what if you rent the property from me for a period of time? Then I give you the option to buy it at some point in 5 years. So some of you come across lease options. I'm kind of giving her an option to buy the property from me. So these are the figures. This is what I said to her. I said, I will sell the property to you in 5 years for 175,000. So that's somewhere between those figures that I'd worked out. A little bit more than lower end, lower than the higher end. I said the rents were 750. So she's going to pay the rent 750. She was happy with that. The mortgage on that property for me was 425. So I'm making £325 a month on that, 3,900 a year. 19,500 over 5 years, and the profit from the sale is about 30,000. So for me, on this one property, in over 5 years, the house has made me just under £50,000, under £10,000 a year. I spent 25% deposit, solicitors, broker's fee. I spent £38,000 on that. So that's an ROI of 25%, 25.8. The best thing here is she's a tenant buyer. I do nothing to this property. All I did was I get the electrics tested out. She's even on benefits, so we've got a free boiler and 7 radiators installed under the benefit scheme. She put in her own kitchen. She was phoning me up and sending me pictures of this magnet kitchen in eggshell blue. I didn't give a monkey's what color it was. She's like, what do you think, Neil? Do you think eggshell blue? Do you think I should go for it? I'm like, it's your kitchen, you decide. So she's painted it, decorated it, new carpets, new kitchen. She's doing a little bit of work on the outside as well. So she's invested in this property because it's going to be her home when she wants to buy it. She's already said to me that she wants to buy it in the next year or so. One of the things she's done with me is she set up her own bank account, and she's putting in her extra money she gets from the cleaning business. So if she gets a job where she earns an extra £500 or something, or £200, she pops it into this bank account towards her deposit. The bank account's in her name. It has to be in her name, but she's given me the bank card. She says, I don't want to spend it. I don't want to get into it. I've got the bank card in my office. So she's basically said, I don't want to touch that money. I want to save it up. So this is pure, real money for me. There's no agent involved. There's no maintenance involved for me. All I get is the gas safety done each year, which I'm going to do anyway. The boiler that's been put in come with a 10-year warranty, so we'll get that serviced and annually fixed. That's the main cost for me. And that's something I've just done very recently. So that 145 buy-to-let property is going to earn more. Now, given the current market, the last year or so, it's gone mental. When you probably sell for more now, but I'm not worried about that. I'm still going to make a good bit of profit out of this property. So that's what I've just done very recently. So what are my thoughts and my suggestions going forward? So old Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, whatever his name is, Quasimodo, he really got everyone's attention, didn't he, in September? On the day that he announced that mini budget, I was actually talking to one of the estate agents that I know quite well. That estate agent told me that he had 20 sales drop out that day. So literally from that announcement, 20 people pulled out of sales. Just dropped through. I don't know what the other agents are seeing, but I'm hearing this story as I speak to other agents or other people. They're all seeing a very similar process because of the interest rates increases. I was talking to my broker at the time. I was doing my property meeting coming up, and I said to him, I said, you're going to come and do a little chat at the property meeting, give us an update on the property. He says, Neil, I've got no product. Literally every fixed rate that he had was pulled. Every lender just went, not doing fixed rates anymore. We're pulling out the market. We'll come back in a few days with our new offering. So mortgages that were already fairly high, I suppose, in comparison to what was going on at 4% maybe, were just pulled, and now they're all coming back in at 5, 5.5, maybe even 6 now at this point, is what he's seeing. I don't know about you, but when you drive around, have you noticed there are more boards popping up in the street? More houses coming back on the market? More people thinking about selling? Yeah. There's a lot of that around. I'm driving and I'm seeing, oh, there's a board up over there. And I'm, as always, just interested. What's that one on the market for? A little bit higher than they should be already, but lots more people, lots more properties coming to the market, lots more opportunities coming. I mean, interest rates are high, yes. So we have to do our figures based on the interest rates that they are at the moment, with a bit of stress testing. We've always stress tested, up until very recently, 6% was our stress test. Well, now we're probably having to stress test at 7%, because there's a very real possibility that you might get a mortgage of 5.5% right now. That might be weekend. I've got one going through at the moment. I've managed to get 4.49, but that's still very high compared to what we were getting before in the 3s and the low 4s. So we need to be available. We need to be ready to buy these properties that are coming up right now. Cash is one of the best ways, or bridging for purchases that may be available. Bridging fees are not really gone up. Again, I was talking to my broker. Bridging fees haven't changed much at all. They were high anyway. So if you're still able to get a property, you can go with bridging, and possibly if you can get cash for deposit or an angel. These are all things I'm telling my current students, the people I'm working with at the moment. And the biggest thing I'm saying to them right now is revisit all those viewings or those offers you put in over the last 3 to 6 months. Everything you offered on, or you viewed, or you looked at over the last 3 something, or maybe you didn't offer on, you just looked at it and thought, I'd be interested in it, it's gone. Go back and review, go back and put those offers forward that work for you. And then talk to agents when you're talking to them. What else has come back on the market? What's dropped out? What's not around anymore? Who's doing what, really? Because there's going to be a huge amount of opportunity now. There's going to be loads more properties coming back on the market. A lot of people panic, and they may actually be able to afford the mortgages they've got now, but if they're coming off their fixed rate in the next 6 months or so, then they're starting to panic. They're starting to see fixed rates quite high. I don't think it's going to go up higher and higher and higher. I think it's going to be settled around about the 6%, maybe slightly better. Not going to drop back down to 3 and 4%, which we're used to very, very quickly. But at the moment, it's going to probably stop around about the 4 or 5% comfortably. Still build in your figures. Look at what you're doing. Work on it. And one of the so I just said all this on my sorry. I didn't realize I had all that on the straight. The other biggest thing for me is lease options. Lease options right now is one of the second things. So as well as doing all those things that I mentioned, let's go and let's look at, if you're in a town, a fairly big town like sort of Leicester, Birmingham, London, these kind of areas, Reading, whatever, the fair cities, you're going to have lots and lots of properties in those cities, and there are going to be people that are struggling. So lease options is one of the strongest, and is always the best option anyway to try when you're buying a property going forward. You may, in the likes of London, for example, you don't have to educate the agent about a lease option really too much. They've been around quite a while now, so a lot of agents know about rent to rent and lease options, so they understand that. But in some places, you may have to educate your agent, which is very difficult because your agent's not motivated if they don't sell the property. Then a lease option, you're not buying it straight away, you're buying it later on. So the agent may not get his fee. So motivate the agent saying, look, I'll make sure you get your fee as soon as we get the lease option signed up. So that might get the agent motivated. If the agent doesn't understand what you're doing and you're finding it difficult to explain to him or her, then instead of explaining it to him or her and asking them to explain it on, which they'll probably get it wrong, or they probably won't put it correctly, ask for a meeting with the agent and the seller, and then explain it to both of them at the same time. And you can explain what's going on. And lease options are very, very flexible. It's a blank piece of paper at the end of the day. What does the seller want? What do you want? Can you come to some agreement on that? Pretty much, it's a two-pronged offer now. And I was talking to a lady who's looking at buying some mixed use at the moment. One of my clients. She's looked at 3 or 4 mixed use properties at the moment, and we've looked and done the figures. Now, if she buys them for the price they are at the moment, it's not going to stack up for her. So on every single one of them, we've done a two-pronged offer attack. One is the offer that we'd buy it if we had no money left in. It's much lower. So let's say it's £145,000 purchase. She's probably looking at offering around about 100. 2 is, however, we can give you 145, but in 5 years' time. Till then, we'll rent the property from you at a set fee so that we can still make some money in between. So she literally, yesterday I had a chat with her on all the deals she looked at. She's putting in those 5 or 6 offers. One of the biggest things you can use is also on, if you're going down the commercial route or the mixed use route, is every commercial agent right now is predicting a drop in prices of 15 to 20%. They all think in the next 12 months, you're going to be shaving 15 to 20% off the prices of commercial units or mixed use units. So that's one of the things you can use when you're talking to the commercial agent, saying, look, I'm talking to other commercial agents. This weekend in the Financial Times, they actually wrote about it, and they had a couple of agents they'd interviewed saying that agents are predicting 15 to 20% drop in prices in the next 12 months. So that's a great negotiating tool for you. Not me saying it, it's the commercial agents, it's the Financial Times. This is what's going to happen. So I've got to give you a lower offer right now to protect myself, or I can give you the asking price in 5 years. So those of you who have done lease options will understand that also within lease options you can have an increased period. So that 5 years can become 10 years if you want to later on. Cool. Well, that's all I was going to say, really, Olivier. I didn't. Oh, other than a lease option is what is a lease option? Sorry, some of you may not know what a lease option is. Lease option is a legal agreement that allows you to control a property to generate income from it, with the right, but not the obligation to buy it later. So you do not have to buy it. So even if you take a lease option for 5 years, in 5 years' time, if the property hasn't come up to the level that you want it to, and you don't want to carry on, you can just walk away and hand the property back to the owner. It's not the right, it's not the obligation. They have to sell it to you, but you don't have to buy it if you don't want to in during that period.
Oh,
okay.
Neil, thank you so much.
Get rid of that. Sorry.
No, can you go back on it?
You want to go back on that? Okay, all right. So these are the benefits of a lease option. You won't have a bank loan. Okay, so there's no bank loan required to control the property. Yes, you have to put something down. You have to what's called an option consideration, which could be £1. It could be £10. It could be 20 grand. It depends on what they want to get involved in the deal. So you've got low or no money down to get into the deal effectively. You will enjoy the capital growth on that property while you don't own it. So you control it for 5 years. Prices are going up. If you've got a repayment mortgage on that, for example, a lot of commercial units have repayment, a lot of residentials have repayment. Actually, that loan is going down and your capital growth is going up. So actually the owner's benefiting because when they actually get the money, they've got less to pay off. You're benefiting because you've got the capital growth in that property. And of course, you can use other people's money. And there's virtually no risk involved because, as I said at the beginning of that section, you have not got the obligation to buy, you've got the option to buy. You don't have to buy the property. So if you do buy something and it turns out to be horrible, you can just say, not for me.
Thank you, Neil. This is...
I did say any questions, but there's just you and me and David.
And David, yes, and maybe David, you have some questions.
Yeah, no, thanks, Neil. Yeah, lease options. I did that course quite a while ago now, and I think I saw it as very much direct to vendor when you do lease options. That's why I was interested in what you were saying about when speaking to agents. If you're buying through an agent, I didn't see what the incentive for them was of a lease option. And also, you know, if it's not an obligation to buy, I think I'd be reluctant to give them their full, you know, 1.5 or 2% fee, if that's what you're talking about. If it's only a right to buy, not an obligation, because you could finish anyway. I don't know what your approach normally is.
Absolutely, it depends on the purchase price, David. I mean, if you're buying something for 100,000 and they've got a 1% fee, that's £1,000, isn't it? It's not a big spend. That can be built into your actual cost of purchase. If you're buying something that's 3 or 4 times that, then you're starting to increase the amount of money you've got to put into the deal. Then it can be negotiable. You could even pay them out of the rent. You know, you could turn around and say, look, I'll pay you some now, and over the next 3 or 4 months, I'll pay you the rest. You'll get a bit of commission every month in that way. You've got to kind of listen to what they want and what they're motivated by. They're not always motivated by getting the commission right now. And there may be a way you can give them also the commission without them having to go through the company, because technically the company they're working for hasn't sold the property yet.
Yeah.
So what you're basically saying, look, I'll give you a couple of £100 to get this over the line. Your company will still get the commission. You'll get that when I buy it, but I'd possibly give you another. You could say £500 would be a fee for him in his back pocket, because even if they get £1,000 commission in the business, he doesn't get £1,000. He might get 10-20% of that. So he may only get a couple of £100 out of that.
Yeah, I understand. But do you also advertise as well? Is that do you do a lot of direct to vendor as well? So okay.
I'll do lease option direct to vendor. I'll tend to be in my local area or somewhere I can get to within an hour.
Makes sense.
So that you can get there and you can meet them and you can talk to them face to face.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, go ahead, David.
No, the other thing it was interesting. Yeah, the stress testing. I think you mentioned sort of 7% because previously you do your stress test and you may only do it at 6% or 5.5% or something like that, but moving up to 7%, I think that could blow out a lot of deals at the moment, especially with some of the fixed rate mortgages. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so much uncertainty. I'm talking to the broker pretty much every day at the moment, and it's literally, I've had mortgages going through But the valuation was done in September, and I've only just got the offer today. Luckily, I've got that rate fixed, but the agent we were using, or the company, which is the building society we were using, they just turned their phones off because they couldn't cope with the interest, and it's taken that long to get it through. So there's all sorts of, and he doesn't think it's going to stay like this for long. He thinks it will start to come back. But what they're seeing is variable rates coming in now. They're seeing more variable rates based on 2% above base or 1% above base, where at the moment that's quite good. So if you've got 2.5% Bank of England and you've got 1% or 2% above base, that's coming at 3 or 4%, which is good. But of course, the mortgage companies are thinking, oh, what happens if the Bank of England base rate goes up again? We've got to pay for the money. We borrow money from other companies. And so they're hedging their bets and doing things like that. So if you get tied into a variable rate, then that's a bit of a gamble at the moment, but that's the kind of thing they're offering.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a number of exit strategies, and it's one of the first times I've had to adopt some of my other exit strategies because one of my properties, it just doesn't work now. It was probably borderline, spent a bit more in the refurb, but it was worth spending the money. So exit strategy number 2 is put on the market, which again, it's not a perfect time to put it on the market, but at least it'll I'll get a return from it. But the original plan was as a buy to let, but not at the rates I'm getting. So
yeah. Or you maybe, if you're not getting much interest, you may offer a rent to buy. You may say to, because with a rent to buy, it's effectively you're giving them an option to buy it, and you can ask for option consideration. I did one recently where it was a flat, the guy wanted to buy it, couldn't afford it, and I took 5% off the purchase price. So he gave me £6,000 up front. And that's an option consideration. You don't ever have to pay that back if you don't need to, if you don't want to.
Yeah.
So that might help you with the cash flow situation. So you might say, well, I'll give you 3 years to buy it. Give me £6,000. So suddenly my cash flow's gone up because I've got £6,000, a couple of £1,000 extra a year. So maybe an option for you there as well.
Again, you will have attracted that from direct to vendor, won't you?
No, that was actually just, I put that one on the market on Facebook, believe it or not. I stuck it on Facebook.
Okay.
Facebook Marketplace. I put property for sale, and also I put a second advert, property for sale. Even if you have a bad credit score, you can't get a mortgage right now, you'd be considered, something along those sort of lines.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I had 2 separate adverts, and I had multiple people contact me.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
So you may be able to hold on to that property or get a little bit more out of it if you can't sell it for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Well, David, thank you for those questions. I've come across with a different type of lease options.
Yeah.
Whereby an older couple, and it works really well with cottages, would like to sell, but the cottage needs upgrading. And the idea is to have the lease option, and then during a period of 6 months or whatever, do up the property and then sell it at a higher price.
Yeah, so you're almost assisted sale, but with the lease options, kind of, you take control of it and then sell it on, and you could possibly share the profit with them if you wanted to, however you could do it. There's the nice thing about that is you've got so many.
In the South, it only works with sharing the profit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's in it for me kind of scenario, they'd be saying, well, why would I do that? What's
Yes.
in it for me? Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what you said about lease option the standard way, which is you rent it out over a period of 5-6 years or whatever. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm going to be looking in some towns not too far away from here.
Yeah.
And work out where it really does stack up.
Yeah. There's a lot more opportunity out there right now. And with the lease options, it's pretty much everywhere. And it's all about, and we talk about win-win, and that's a bit of a cliche, but it really can be a win-win. It really can be something they get from it and something you get from it. Otherwise, you don't do it.
And no money down, which is good.
Yes. No money down.
No, I think it's a time to look at other initiatives. When the obvious ones, are a little bit stuck at the moment, probably.
Yeah.
So having a slightly different initiative is probably useful. So I need to think about that a bit more.
The sort of thing you should do every year anyway, David. You probably do. At the end of the year, I do a review of what properties have got, what they're earning, what their generating what problems I've had, you know, and if I've got a particular one bad property that's year on year causing me problems. I had one that was every time the tenant changed over, needed a refurb. So it was actually not making me any money. It was just ticking over. So it was a case of, right, I need to get rid of that one, take the money from that and put it into something else.
Yeah.
You know?
Good idea. Yeah. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay.
Well, David, thank you for coming along. It's been nice to see you. And you, Neil, thank you. Wonderful presentation. So this is recorded. So Neil, I'll send the recording to you.
Lovely. Thank you.
And I'll send it over to Mark as well, as that will be posted on the group.
Maps group. Lovely.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you for asking me. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Neil.
See
Take
you.
care. See you later, David. Bye-bye.
Take care. See you again, Oliver.